On January 11, 1999, the quiet town of Katy, Texas, experienced a shocking tragedy. Belinda Temple, a beloved 30-year-old high school teacher, was found murdered in her own home during the day. She was married to David Temple, a high school football coach, and they had a 3-year-old son named Evan. At the time, Belinda was 8 months pregnant with a baby girl. David discovered her in their bedroom closet, fatally shot, leaving the community stunned and heartbroken. After inspecting the crime scene, the police inferred that the murder was the result of a burglary that had been committed in the house. However, further investigation began to reveal troubling signs indicating that much deeper secrets were hiding in plain sight. What were the secrets hidden in the house of this perfect American family? Was this an unplanned murder case due to a burglary attempt? The city of Katy was David Temple's hometown. As the famous linebacker of Katy High School's football team, young David was a local hero admired for his great physique, excellent sporting knowledge, and attractive personality. Nicknamed the Temple of Doom, David was known to be quite aggressive on the field, always hungry to win. David Temple, the linebacker, is 5'11", 233 pounds, out of Katy, Texas. In '89, we won the first conference championship in the history of the university. His excellent skills landed him a scholarship at Stephen F. Austin State University in Nacogdoches, Texas. Number 42 on the university team, David led his team to win the first conference championship in the history of the university in 1989, for which he was awarded the gold championship ring. This was also the place where he crossed paths with a local girl named Belinda Lucas. Belinda grew up in the small town of Nacogdoches, Texas. Cheerful and social, 20-year-old Belinda was a sports enthusiast and loved to play volleyball. This was part of the reason David was smitten with her. David and Belinda started dating in college and had a fairy tale wedding in 1992. They both got a master's degree in education, and right after that, they were blessed with their son Evan in 1995. They decided to move back to David's hometown Katy, where they took on jobs as teachers. Belinda taught special ed at Katy High School, while David became a football coach at Alif Hastings High School. Together, they built their dream life in Katy with good jobs, a comfortable house in a nice neighborhood, a lovely backyard for Evan to play in, and even a dog named Shaka. Their friends and colleagues described their marriage as a perfect one. In the summer of 1998, the family shared more exciting news. Belinda found out she was expanding her family. She was having a little girl and was so excited about it. She'd even named the baby Aaron. But little did anyone know that her happiness would soon be dealt an unbearable blow. January 11, 1999, was a hectic and tiring day for Belinda, who was 8 months pregnant by then. During her workday in school, she got a call from the Tigerland Child Care Center that Evan was sick and wasn't eating anything that day. He was not wanting to play with any of the other kids. He didn't want to eat, and that was one thing that he loved to do. He felt a little warm to us. Belinda tried to call David to ask him to bring Evan home, but even after multiple tries, she couldn't get a hold of him. Frustrated, she left to pick up Evan herself. Finally, at around 1:25 p.m., she managed to reach David, who immediately headed back home to be with Evan. Belinda left for school again to attend after-school meetings, where she stayed until 3:20 p.m. When she finally got home later that afternoon, Belinda was so tired that she headed upstairs to rest. David took Evan to the park and ran some errands, but when they returned at around 5:35 p.m., David noticed something unsettling. The gate was flung open, and the glass panel on the door was broken. Fearing a home invasion, David ran across the street with Evan to get help from his neighbor Mike Regaro. When Mike rushed back with David, he was unable to enter the Temple's home due to their dog Shaka's aggressive barking. So David entered the house alone through the back gate and ran upstairs to the master bedroom, where an awful sight awaited him. His pregnant wife Belinda was lying lifeless in the walk-in closet. A devastated David immediately called 911 and tried to save Belinda and their unborn baby as instructed by the operator, but it was sadly too late. Police and paramedics rushed to the Temple's house, but there was one problem. Shaka wouldn't allow them in. Shaka was known to be the most ferocious guard dog in the neighborhood, and people avoided crossing paths with him. Even an animal specialist couldn't calm him. With no other option, the police were just about ready to shoot Shaka when David appeared and let them into the house. As the police entered the home, they saw signs suggestive of a burglary. The glass pane near the knob of the back door was broken, and a few objects in the living room were displaced. Upstairs, they found Belinda lying on her stomach with a large wound on the back of her head. Further analysis pointed to a 12-gauge shotgun as the murder weapon. A thorough search of the house revealed 2 rifles, but no guns resembling the murder weapon were found. What unsettled investigators was that this burglary had happened in broad daylight, when the streets of Katy were full of teenagers hanging out and people walking their dogs. As they re-examined the crime scene more closely, it became evident that some things were not adding up. Police arrived at the shocking conclusion that the burglary seemed staged. If the glass pane on the back door was broken to unlock the door, then the glass fragment should be lying in front of the door. Instead, the glass was scattered to the side of the room. This angle was only possible if the door was opened first and then broken. Police also noted that Shaka, the guard dog, would never allow strangers into the house unless the intruder was known to him. Moreover, nothing valuable had been stolen from the house. Lastly, forensics found no gunpowder residue on Belinda's hands, suggesting that she wasn't close to the gun when she was shot. As the police were deep in thought, David Temple asked if he could leave the house and take his son and Shaka to his brother Darren Temple's home in the neighboring town of Sealy. Although they found his request unusual, they allowed him to leave. However, they weren't ready to give up. It was the town's first murder case in years, and they wanted to catch the perpetrator soon. The detectives decided to thoroughly analyze David's statements and observe his behavior. David Temple. So when I realized that something was wrong, I picked up my son, ran to the neighbors to try and get some help. No one answered the door, so I continued to bang on the door and he answered. He took my son. I ran to the house to check to see if anything was missing. I proceeded to go up the stairs, noticed my dog was agitated. He did not want to go into our bedroom. The police noted that during the initial 911 call and follow-up interviews, David kept mentioning details that were unusual for someone in distress. One such detail was his frequent mention of Belinda being shot. However, he had claimed he only discovered the broken glass when he arrived. If so, how could he be certain that Belinda was shot? Moreover, during the 911 call, he spoke about how he had tried to contact Belinda, but he didn't mention the most crucial detail: who he thought was responsible. David was surprisingly calm and collected while providing his statement, which didn't align with typical reactions to such a traumatic event. In their quest to understand more about David and Belinda's relationship, the detectives questioned their friends and neighbors. The investigators were informed that David was an unfaithful husband. Shortly after the discovery, they found out that David was having an affair with a teacher named Heather Scott. It was the day after Belinda's death. Detectives were working around the clock. They were determined to catch Belinda's killer. The detective knew David had not told them everything. Case of Lonzie Barton. On July 24, 2015, 32-year-old William Reuben Ebron Jr. made a call to 911 dispatchers from the Jacksonville Police Department. The dispatcher was momentarily caught off guard, as not only was he reporting a car being stolen, but his girlfriend, Lana Leroy Barton's 21-month-old son, Lonzie Barton, had been abducted along with his vehicle. Little did anyone know that the search for the little boy would go on to be one of the biggest missing child cases in Jacksonville. You lied at least twice in here today. Okay, yes. Don't get smart with me. Well, I'm not. Okay, 'cause I'm here. Listen, I'm third day burning a candle trying to find your son. Okay. When you were sleeping, my ass was here. Okay. As the investigation intensified, police uncovered several alarming clues that suggested something more sinister was afoot. This is less of a missing persons investigation, more of a homicide investigation. Days have slipped by. 21-month-old is out on his own somewhere. That is a turn of events. That's bad, and it begins to keep going the same. Where was Lonnie? What was the truth behind his kidnapping? At 2:22 a.m. on Friday, July 24, 2015, 911 dispatchers received a call from Ruben Ebrin, who reported his car, a bright orange and black 1995 Honda Civic, was stolen from his Ravenwood apartment complex. The call took a darker turn when Ebrin told the dispatcher that his girlfriend's son, Lonzie Barton, was in the back seat at the time. He explained to the dispatcher that he tried to chase down the car, but was unable to catch up. Within minutes, police arrived at the Ravenwood apartment complex, where Ebrin lived with his girlfriend, Lana Leroy Barton, and her 2 children, 21-month-old Lonzie and his 5-year-old sister Lily. Ebrin told officers that he'd been on his way to fetch his girlfriend Lana from her job at Wacko's Gentleman Club, where she worked as a dancer. He had placed both Lonzie and Lily into the car to take them along for a drive, but soon after he started the car engine, he realized he'd forgotten something in the apartment. While the car was still idling in the parking lot, he left both children in the back seat and ran up to fetch his things. When he walked out from the room, he saw that Lily had followed him up and wanted to watch TV instead of going to fetch Lana. He put on the movie Aladdin and was going to fetch Lonzie from the car so that the child could stay at home with the sister. However, as he stepped out of the apartment, he saw the car being driven away. Ebrin then told officers that he tried to give chase on foot but couldn't catch up with the vehicle in time. After police interviewed and questioned Ebrin about the incident, an Amber Alert was issued, and the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office took over the investigation, with the team being led by Sheriff Mike Williams and Chief Investigator Tom Hackney. Officers fanned out and searched the area on foot and by car. 15 minutes into the search, Ebrin's car was found a mile from the apartment complex. The keys were still in the ignition, but there was no sign of Lonzie in the car or anywhere nearby. Police had hoped that someone who saw a child wandering the streets would call in and report it to authorities, but no such call came. Going back through the questions they asked Ebrin, teams of officers visited the Lauder and gas station that Ebrin alleged to have visited the day before, with both Lonzie and Lily. Nothing of significance was found in either area. By Friday morning, the community had joined the search for Lonzie. Residents from the Ravenwood apartment complex joined the search effort by handing out flyers and putting up missing persons posters in the area to assist the police. Investigators also made contact with Lonzie's biological father, Christopher Barton, who lived in Bakers County. Officers were sent to his home to ask him questions about Lonzie and his possible whereabouts. But Christopher was eventually cleared of any involvement in the toddler's disappearance. A second team of officers visited Lana's workplace and questioned other staff and patrons about anything that seemed out of the ordinary the night before. According to staff, nothing seemed different, and Lana was her usual self at work the entire night. But police were still suspicious about Ebrin, particularly investigator Tom Hackney, who wanted to take a closer look at the man who was minding the children. Ebrin offered no resistance when he was asked to go down to the police station for questioning. Investigators started by asking Ebrin to recount the events of the previous night. He stuck to his original story of how the day unfolded. He explained to investigators that he often watched the children whenever Lana had to work. The interview was casual, as investigators suspected that Ebrin was holding back information that could help them find Lonzie. Lana was also questioned by police and cooperated with the investigation fully. She told officers that she'd left Lonzie and Lily in the care of Ebrin while she worked that night. Lana also informed them that she last saw her son before leaving for work at 8:30 p.m. that Thursday night, and he'd seemed well and untroubled. Lana was allowed to leave, as there was no other information she could provide in the investigation. The officers also allowed her to spend some time with Ebrin before his next round of questioning. As police watched them through the camera during the breaks in between questioning, it became clear to officers that both Ebrin and Lana seemed concerned about each other's well-being, which investigators found strange as they were dealing with a missing child. After Lana was allowed to leave the station, officers returned to question Ebrin. Investigators started to ask more leading questions, and iron out the creases from Ebron's statements. He eventually admitted to returning to the apartment to pick up cocaine that he planned on selling when he went to pick up Lana from the club. Ebron's frustration with police became noticeable as he started to grow angry and demanded to know if he was being considered a suspect. With no physical evidence to suggest Ebron had a hand in Lonzi's disappearance, police instead charged Ebron with child neglect for leaving Lonzi and Lily in the running car and slipping away to get drugs for himself. As a result of this, Ebron was detained at the county jail. With Ebron behind bars, police started to dig into his personal background and discovered his disturbing criminal history. Police found several court documents filed against Ebron in Duval County, dating back as far as 2005. These charges included armed robbery and assault charges brought against him by his ex-girlfriend. Ebron was also given probation for a grand theft auto charge. According to the court documents, Ebron was also accused of harming both his ex-girlfriend and their son after he violently assaulted her while she was carrying the child. He'd also been accused of stalking by his ex-girlfriend. To add on to this, he also attacked one of her sisters, which led to the sister being hospitalized. Ebron also threatened to shoot his ex-girlfriend's 12-year-old niece and also had a drug charge carried over from Baker County. But that wasn't all. There were new charges brought against Ebron by the same ex-girlfriend, who alleged that he assaulted her in the apartment he shared with Lana and her children on July 1, 2015. The assault occurred when she'd gone to fetch the children she shared custody of with Ebron. This occurred while Lana's children were in the living room. These charges painted a very dark picture of Ebron. Police began to question if there was more to the disappearance of Lonzi than what their main suspect was telling them. But even though police were questioning Ebron's version of events, the search for Lonzi didn't stop. By Saturday, over 100 police officers were deployed to search the surrounding parks and forested areas. Bloodhounds and other canines were used in the search for the missing toddler. Searches by helicopter were conducted over the heavily wooded areas in and around Jacksonville. He was blue-eyed and blonde, the image of a cherub, as many people would say. His young life was one of turmoil with a disrupted family life, and people were desperately trying to locate him. On Sunday, July 28, 2015, police dive teams started searching the lakes and waterways in and around Jacksonville. They believed it was possible that a child his age could have wandered into one of the water bodies without any adult supervision. But soon, the weekend stretched into days, and there was still no sign of Lonzi. After 10 days of intensive search, police scaled back on search efforts as the possibility of finding Lonzi alive was starting to look bleak. This started, Friday morning about 2:20 in the morning, as a report of an auto theft and abduction that began search efforts in and around the Brewood neighborhood where the case was originally reported. We worked from a window of time from Thursday night at 8 p.m., when Lonzi was last seen by his mother, in the care of Mr. Ebron. We have interviewed and re-interviewed. We searched more than 5,000 acres with aviation, on foot with officers and canines, searches by boat, dive teams searching more than 20 bodies of water. And really now we're at a point where we start to transition and refocus the investigation. From this point on, this is less of a missing persons investigation and more of a homicide investigation. Okay, well now we know you lie twice. Okay, yes. Don't get smart with me. I'm not getting smart with you. I'm not. Okay, because I'm here. Listen, I'm third day burning a candle trying to find your son. Okay, when you were sleeping my ass was here. Okay. In a press conference held by the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, investigators revealed to the public that the search was now less of a missing persons case, but more of a homicide investigation. After this announcement, investigators turned up the heat on Ebron. A few days later, on August 4, 2015, Lonzi's mother Lana was also arrested and charged with child neglect and lying to investigators. Lana had initially failed to inform investigators that both she and Ebron were using drugs on the night Lonzi was reported missing. Investigators now suspected that the entire disappearance might have been staged as a way to cover up the couple's neglect of their children. The couple continued to deny any wrongdoing, but the pressure on both of them grew as the police kept up their investigations. Then, on January 5, 2016, after months of investigation and questioning, Ebron finally broke down and confessed to police that Lanzi was no longer alive. He agreed to lead investigators to the site where he'd disposed of Lanzi's body. The remains of the child were found in a remote wooded area off of State Road 104 in Jacksonville. The discovery brought an end to the grueling 6-month search for the toddler. Upon the discovery of Lanzi's body, investigators could only piece together some of what happened to him. They found the body buried in a shallow grave. They also found a cinder block used to weigh down Lanzi's tiny body. The medical examiner concluded that Lanzi had suffered severe head trauma and that his death was caused by blunt force trauma to the head. With this damning evidence, investigators charged Ebron with second-degree murder, child neglect, and giving false information to police. Ebron accepted a plea deal and was sentenced to 20 years in prison for his role in the death of Lanzi Barton. Lana Barton was also found guilty of child neglect and lying to police and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. The case of Lanzi Barton was a tragic reminder of the importance of child safety and the devastating consequences of neglect. His short life was marred by turmoil and tragedy, but the efforts of the police and community to find him showed the lengths people would go to ensure justice was served. Case of Chelsea King. Chelsea wasn't home when I came home that day. The latest missing California teenager, Chelsea King, 17-year-old Chelsea King, young Chelsea King. Chelsea King, a devastating 6-day search tonight. News is working every angle of this story. I saw her car by the tennis courts, and I walked out on the tennis courts, and there's, I think, 8 tennis courts, and she wasn't on any of them. I feel like I'm sorry, not being able to breathe. And then I spin to head back, and I see some running trails. Go down the path, call for her, don't find her, call the cops. And at this point, I have no idea what to think. On February 25, 2010, 17-year-old Chelsea King went missing after setting out for a jog on the local hiking trail in Rancho Bernardo Park. Chelsea was a very responsible young lady, so her parents grew a bit concerned when she didn't return home at her usual time that day. They decided to contact the police, thinking she might never return back home again. What had gone wrong on that specific day to make her deviate from her normal routine? Was she just being a rebellious teenager? Had she decided to run away from home, or was there something much bigger at play beneath the surface? Chelsea King was born on July 2, 1992, in Poway, California. Her parents, Brent and Kelly, struggled after her birth because the doctor didn't remove the placenta completely. This left Kelly with Asherman syndrome, a condition where scar tissues form inside the uterus and/or the cervix. Chelsea enjoyed a very close relationship with her younger brother and loved to spend time with her family. The family had moved a few times, first to the San Francisco Bay Area and then to Naperville, Illinois, before settling down in the city of Poway in San Diego County, California in 2007. Chelsea was a bright student with a bubbly personality. A student of Poway High School, she would get straight A's in all her subjects, maintaining a grade point average of 4.2. She maintained a vegetarian diet and really appreciated nature, which would explain her love for going on runs to the park. In fact, she and her friends were planning an environment cleanup project in the Rancho Bernardo Community Park, which led her to visit the park on February 25, 2010, a day before the event, to scout out the area. On that fateful day, Chelsea left home at 6:15 a.m. as usual to attend her peer counseling appointment before attending school. She'd normally return home from school at 5 p.m., but when the clock hit 6 p.m. that day, her parents grew concerned and agitated, finding their daughter's phone to be switched off. Kelly and Brent decided to call her friends to ask about her whereabouts. We started calling around to different friends of Chelsea and asking, "Hey, is Chelsea with you? Have you seen Chelsea? Did you know of any plans that she had?" And the responses all back were, "No, we haven't seen her. We're not with her," which heightened even greater fear in us. Anxious, her dad decided to connect with AT&T to track her daughter's location. Soon enough, they found her location to be near Rancho Bernardo Park, and Brent immediately ran to the park in search of his daughter. He found her car in the parking lot, and her purse and school clothes were lying inside the vehicle. Chelsea loved to run, and at times she'd run for miles before returning home. But recently, she'd fainted while doing her regular jogging schedule, making Brent even more uneasy. So he decided to call the authorities, thinking that she might have fainted again and was unable to call for help. As the authorities started getting involved in the case, along with some locals, they were quick to draw parallels between a similar case that happened almost a year earlier. The people of San Diego were now watching the case of Chelsea King very closely. When Chelsea went missing, volunteers came together to aid in the search for Chelsea, which was appreciated by her family. "My heart is overflowing with all this support and all this love, and there's no words for it." They searched all the areas near our house and the usual places she'd go. Chelsea did leave some clues behind before disappearing mysteriously. During the search, authorities found Chelsea's underwear and shoe near the trail. When criminalist Anne-Marie Schubert studied the DNA sample of Chelsea, the DNA matched with the blood found on her underwear. But in a shocking turn of events, Schubert also found bodily fluid of a man. When this information was registered in the report, investigators started searching for possible matches in their criminal database. After finding possible suspects, the DNA found in the bodily fluid matched with one particular man. This man was a 31-year-old John Gardner, but he was also connected to an earlier case, the case of 14-year-old Amber Dubois, that people of San Diego started to gossip about. They thought she ran away. They thought she met someone online. You know in your heart when something's wrong. The worst part is when you're looking and you're searching and you have no answers. On February 13, 2009, 14-year-old Amber Dubois from Escondido went missing while on her way to Escondido High School. Amber was born on October 25, 1994. She lived with her mother, Carrie, and her mother's boyfriend, Dave, but loved to spend her weekends with her father, Maurice or Mo. February 13, 2009, was a cold, rainy morning. Usually, Amber's classes ended around 2:45 p.m., and she always came back an hour after school was over. But when she didn't return home on February 13, 2009, her parents were alarmed and scared. Dave went to pick her up from school, but Amber's teacher told him that Amber didn't attend school that day. Dave and Carrie immediately filed a missing persons report. Escondido police scouted the area near her house and her school, but found no trace of Amber. The investigators and Amber's parents thought that it might be a kidnapping case. Carrie and Dave poured everything into the search for their daughter, and friends and family joined their search as well, but they too were unable to find any trace of Amber. Finally, her parents breathed a sigh of relief when the investigators declared that her phone was briefly turned on. This led the police department to release an emergency notice right away, urging all the people in Escondido to report any knowledge they might have concerning Amber's whereabouts. This is an important message from the Escondido Police Department regarding a missing juvenile at risk. The missing juvenile is Amber Lee Dubois. Several people started coming forward with their accounts of having seen Amber in the days leading to her disappearance. These witness reports started to paint the picture that Amber was probably not kidnapped, but instead chose to run away from home on her own accord. Carrie, however, was resolute in her decision that Amber would never run away from home, but authorities weren't convinced. A search and rescue operation was set up by Rincon Middle School, where officers and volunteers came forward to pass out flyers and search the nearby area in hopes of finding any clues. Carrie's boyfriend Dave was the last person to interact with Amber before she went missing. Dave took a polygraph test 8 times, and it came out to be negative each time, but Carrie still suspected him. John Albert Gardner III was born in Culver City, California, on April 9, 1979, to mother Kathy Osborne and father John Albert Gardner. Kathy was not at all happy with John Sr.'s out-of-control drinking. He even got a DUI, which forced Kathy to drive him off to work. John's mother, Kathy, worked long hours, and John spent most of his time with his aunts and cousins who raised him. He was close to his older half-sisters, Shannon and Serena, but he claimed to have an intimate relationship with one of his aunts. When John was born, he had allergies and ear infections, which made him fussy. He also suffered from asthma, and he was an extremely active baby as well. In 1980, Kathy and John Sr. got married when John was 16 months old. As John grew up, his behavior started to worsen. In February 1989, John was admitted to an inpatient program at UCLA, where he was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, with mixed emotional features. The doctor also stated that he enjoyed showing hostility towards young children and would often lose his temper. In one incident when he was 21 years old, he assaulted a 13-year-old neighbor, and he was arrested for the crime. There were accusations that he'd also engaged in activities with her, apart from savagely beating her up. He denied all the accusations at first, but finally confessed to hitting the girl, but claimed he didn't indulge in any activities with her. He was convicted in 2000 for assaulting his young neighbor and served 5 years in prison. He claimed that he'd been victimized by the system, even though there was clear evidence against him. Kathy told the court, "Let us know in the comment section.